I'm Mark Doyle, and I'm going to tell you a truly remarkable story. In the midst of one of the darkest chapters of our times, the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, this is the story of a man who put his own life on the line to save others, time after time.
He said, you can't kill these people, you can't take them out at all. I refuse that. And he opened his arms. If you want to take them, you first kill me.
With extraordinary courage, this UN peacekeeper from Senegal saved many hundreds of lives.
The gutsiness of that's the sort of Victoria Cross type of action.
I've returned to Rwanda and met people now scattered around the world to enable me to tell this extraordinary story for the first time.
Alors, je me souviens d'une camionnette, nous on était couchés et ils nous ont tassé les valises sur nous.
How many people did you kill?
Haguye abantu benshi. Ariko ntabwo nari bagiye ngo mbare ngo gutya ntabwo twabaraga.
I've wanted to tell this story for a long time. It's the story of an unsung hero, a good man in Rwanda. I'm on my way back to Rwanda. What happened here was so awful, so shocking in its intensity, that it has changed the way I look at the world.
Our correspondent Mark Doyle has just flown into Kigali Airport and sent this report.
Sustained automatic fire could be heard from inside the city a few kilometres away. Several mortars exploded near the airport.
Government militia have been on the street searching for their enemies. Our correspondent, Mark Doyle, reports
at least 100,000 people have been killed in the last month.
The rebels are secure in their bases here in the north and in the east of the country. This war could last a long time. Mark Doyle, BBC News, Northern Rwanda.
The Hotel des Mille Collines in the Rwandan capital, Kigali, is at the centre of this story. My memories of events here come back with digital clarity. I've been reconstructing what happened in Rwanda 20 years ago with the help of some of these old maps, and this is my reporter's notebook with some handwritten dispatches that I wrote at the time. And this is Rwanda. Yeah, okay, so this is Rwanda in Central Africa, the capital Kigali here. And basically what happened in 1994 is that there was a civil war between the majority ethnic Hutu and the minority ethnic Tutsi. And at the same time as a classic civil war between the two armies was going on, there was a genocide war, and the majority Hutu were essentially trying to wipe out the minority Tutsi and anybody else who disagreed with their very hardline Hutu position. I've never forgotten one man I met on my assignment in Rwanda 20 years ago, an unarmed military observer with a small United Nations force that was in Rwanda to monitor the ceasefire and to try to keep the peace. He's Captain Mbai Diane, an officer from the army of the West African state of Senegal. Senegal is 5,000 kilometres and half a continent away from Rwanda, but in both countries, French is one of the main languages. Captain Mbai Diane was a relatively junior UN officer. He wouldn't be filmed officially by journalists like me. But there are a few shots of him caught by his comrades in this home video footage. Here he is, smoking a cigarette. Smiling, confident, friendly. What sort of guy was he? What sort of personality was he?
Tall, svelte, smooth, but energetic. A sparkle in his eye.
The Canadian military commander of the UN peacekeeping mission in Rwanda in 1994 remembers him as a soldier who stood out from the ranks.
He was an expressive type of person, and so that's why he stood out, because he moved at least half a pace faster than everybody else. So what he did was in total concert with who he was.
The UN was in Rwanda to try to end a war that had been raging there for several years. Rebels, representing the ethnic Tutsi minority, who'd been marginalised for a generation, had invaded and held part of the country. There was now a pause in this war and an uneasy peace agreement was arranged. The UN was supposed to police it. But the atmosphere was extremely tense. The UN mission was small and lacked resources. On the night of April the 6th, 1994, a catastrophic event took place. I rushed to Rwanda for what I knew would be a huge story.
The presidents of Rwanda and Burundi in Central Africa have been killed in a plane crash. The circumstances are unclear. Rwandan officials say the plane was shot down.
20 years on, it's still unclear which side shot down the plane, the Tutsi rebels or Hutu hardliners opposed to the peace deal. But it reignited the war, and the downing of the plane triggered a wave of terror and killing by hardline Hutus against Tutsis and anyone else who got in their way. Dreadful scenes like this were repeated right across the country. The killing had begun with the assassination of the Rwandan Prime Minister and her husband the morning after the president's plane was attacked. Her 5 children had been bundled over a garden fence and hidden in this house that backed onto the Prime Minister's residence.
Enfin, moi, je sais pas, j'arrive pas à imaginer ce qui se passait. Vous imaginez un peu l'ambiance, dans une ambiance de peur, comme ça.
Marie-Christine Umuhoza is the daughter of the murdered Prime Minister. She was 15 when her mother was killed, and she has never spoken in public before about those days.
C'est vrai que à un moment donné, on était un peu obligé de faire abstraction, de couper, parce que ça devenait insupportable. En plus,
The house where Marie-Christine and her 4 brothers were hiding was in a residential compound for UN civilian aid workers. General Dallaire, the commander of the UN peacekeeping mission, arrived at the compound to find Mbai Dian waiting for him.
So banged on this big gate, steel gate. The gate opened, and what I see in there is a UN vehicle, and he's standing there, not smiling but confident. And within seconds or nanoseconds, he starts to brief me on what had happened there, and all the other civilians, and they were all clustered around him. He was their sense of security.
Soldiers were still hunting the Prime Minister's children and had surrounded the compound. There was no time to lose.
He decided to load the kids up, hide them under tarp and so on, and just drive like stink.
sur le chemin, il y avait des barrières militaires, etc. Donc on était un peu obligés, en tout cas il ne fallait pas parler. Il fallait faire semblant de ne pas être rwandais.
The gutsiness of that was there are no limits to try to describe how gutsy. That's the sort of Victoria Cross type of action.
Marie-Christine and her brothers made it to the relative safety of the Hôtel des Mille Collines.
Il y avait justement, après on a appris que c'était un capitaine qui s'appelle le capitaine Bay. Je lui dois la vie, hein, mes frères également. Je pense que s'il avait été là, est-ce que je serais là? Je ne sais pas.
All across Rwanda, what appeared to be a meticulously planned operation of mass killing was swinging into gear. Tutsis were the main target, but moderate Hutus were killed too. Those that could fled for their lives. Many thought, wrongly, that churches would provide safe refuge. Thousands came here to the large compound of the Sainte Famille Church in central Kigali. But, incredible though it may sound, some Hutu priests had been colluding with militiamen to attack Tutsis. Consili Mukamwezi has a shocking story to tell about that. She'd taken refuge in the church in the early days of the genocide. And she'll never forget the men or the place in her story.
C'était où? C'est ici. C'est là-bas? Ok.
Derrière la maison là.
Ok. On peut aller là-bas un peu? Ok.
Captain Bai Dian would make it his business to come to the church every now and then to check on what was going on. He knew Consili because before the genocide began, she worked for the National Telephone Company. He used to go to her office to pay his phone bills.
Un militaire, quelqu'un qui était habillé en militaire, avec des quatre miliciens à côté de lui.
Mais en tenue militaire?
En tenue militaire, oui, il était en tenue militaire.
Mais c'était un abbé?
Il était armé avec un Kalachnikov, et il avait aussi un pistolet et des grenades. Alors il a armé sa Kalachnikov, il a voulu tirer sur moi. J'avais peur d'être tué, j'ai supplié pour qu'il ne me tue pas. Je te dis, s'il vous plaît, ne me tuez pas, je ne peux pas partir des complices, je suis ici comme réfugié, c'est tout. Le capitaine Bay qui descendait de là, qui
cet abbé, il avait
une Kalachnikov.
Comme, montrez, comme avec le...
Avec une Kalachnikov, comme ça, il voulait me tuer. Il était comme ça, il voulait me tuer. Alors le capitaine Bay est venu, il m'a dit, il lui a dit, pourquoi vous voulez tuer cette dame? Il ne faut pas que tu tues cette dame. Qu'est-ce qu'elle a fait? Qu'est-ce qu'elle a fait? Il s'est mis entre moi et l'abbé pour que je ne sois pas tué. Mais il n'avait pas d'armes, lui. Parce que les militaires de la minoire n'étaient pas armés. Ils n'avaient rien comme arme. Alors c'est comme ça qu'il m'a sauvé. Et je le remercie parce que s'il n'avait pas été là, je ne serais pas en vie maintenant.
While this deadly drama was unfolding, the world turned its back. Western countries and even the United Nations seemed to be saying, in effect, that Rwandan lives didn't matter.
There was no grand plan left. The UN, in fact, 3 weeks into the genocide, was still arguing whether or not I was allowed to protect anybody. And so they're debating it. Meanwhile, we're in the field, and guys like Jiang are saving bodies left, right, and center, pulling them out, trying to get them to the airport. And so it was a core of people who had a sense of humanity that went well beyond their orders, went well beyond any mandate. It was, I am committed to these human beings. They're going to be slaughtered. They don't deserve it. So guys like him.
And guys like Mbai were facing every day guys like this. This man is one of the killers. He has served many years in jail. And he remembers Captain Mbai Dian.
Njya kumumenya bwa mbere yacaga kuri barriere nari ndiho ku Gitega.
How many times
Did you personally see Captain Mbaye going through your roadblock?
ni nk'inshuro zigera ku 10.
Was there not any talk of trying to stop him rescuing people?
Babanzaga kumuhagarika bakamustopisha agahagarara, noneho yamara guhagarara akava mu modoka akagenda akanegosiya nabo, akavugana nabo. Yari umuntu ubona uzi kuganira n'abantu, akabaganiriza neza, aseka, ubona nta kibazo, akabigisha. Yamara kubigisha ukabona uburakari buracururitse, bafunguye bariyeri aragiye.
To find out more about Captain Mbaye, this man who risked his own life to save so many others, I travelled to his home country, Senegal. This is the capital, Dakar. I've come to meet a man who was Mbaye's friend and comrade, and who served in the same UN peacekeeping force in Rwanda 20 years ago. He's now one of the most senior officers in the Senegalese army.
Mbaye était de nature très taquin. Il aimait plaisanter avec les gens, aimait se moquer d'eux de temps en temps. Il lui arrivait effectivement au barrage de se moquer des miliciens, de parler au chef. Mais ce n'était pas tout. C'est quelqu'un qui était généreux et qui aimait partager. Et donc je vais vous dire que Mbaye Diagne, en fait, dans sa voiture, il y avait souvent des caisses de bière, il y avait souvent des bouteilles de whisky, il y avait souvent beaucoup de paquets de cigarettes. Et il était souvent à court d'argent. Parce que chaque fois qu'il passait un barrage, les gosses lui disaient, bon chef, on a faim, on a soif, Il donnait soit sa cigarette, soit quelquefois le chef lui donnait une bière ou un whisky, ça dépend.
But he was a Muslim. Mbaye was a Muslim.
Oui,
but
mais
he carried alcohol around in his car to give
exact.
out to the militia,
Yes.
to make friends with them.
Exactement. Pour rester amis, et ça le sauvait aussi. Ça lui permettait d'aller partout sans être suspect, sans attirer la suspicion des miliciens.
Before he was posted to Rwanda, Captain Mbaye lived in this area of Dakar, and his family are still here. Bonjour. Ah, bonjour. Madame, ça fait un peu de temps. Oui. Enchanté encore une fois. Ok, très bien. Ici. Yassine Diane came from an army family and met Mbaye at a social event in the barracks. They married in 1988 and had 2 children. Le capitaine dans cette photo?
Il est là.
Mbaye would phone home from Rwanda about once a week.
Quand il me téléphonait, il me faisait part de la situation qui était là-bas et il me disait tout le temps que c'était dangereux. Il y avait des morts un peu partout dans les rues et comme ça. Mais moi, à chaque fois, je lui disais de beaucoup faire attention. Parce qu'il a laissé ici des enfants en bas âge. Donc fais attention à ce que tu fais. Il me dit non, c'est mon boulot. Je suis militaire, c'est mon job. Donc c'est ça.
By now, several weeks into the genocide, the whole of Rwanda was engulfed in violence. And Captain Mbaye was stuck right in the middle of it, as his own home video of the battle for central Kigali shows. He helped organise another convoy, trying to take truckloads of refugees across the front line to safety. On board one lorry was a Rwandan doctor who worked for an American aid agency at the time, Odette Nyiramalimo. But then militiamen forced it to stop on this hill.
Now, when we came down and we arrived here,
So it was around here that the lorry got stopped,
yes,
is that right?
it was around here.
Yeah. So did they try and pull you off the lorry, or what happened?
They tried to pull out. They said first, go out, you stop and go out. We were hiding, we didn't want to go out. But they even climbed the lorry. They tried to pull us out.
They climbed on top of the lorry to pull you out?
Yes, to pull us out.
And what was Captain Mbai doing at this time?
And he said, you can't kill these people. You can't take them out at all. I refuse that. And he opened his arms. If you want to take them, you first kill me.
Eventually, Captain Mbai and the other UN officers persuaded the militiamen to back off and leave the refugees on the trucks. Two months into this war now, and there's intense shelling and small arms fire every day in the capital, Kigali.
Mark,
And we know from Captain Mbai's wife that all the death and destruction he was seeing firsthand was beginning to take its toll on the man.
Oui, c'était le dimanche. Il m'a appelé le dimanche. On a longuement parlé. Il m'a dit que bientôt la mission serait finie. Il ne nous reste que 12 jours pour rentrer au Sénégal. Donc il faut beaucoup prier pour nous et tout.
2 days after that phone call, Mbai was sent on a mission for General Dallaire. It meant crossing the front line again.
On the morning of May the 31st, 1994, there was suddenly a lot of chatter on the walkie-talkies of the United Nations peacekeepers that I was with at the time. And I heard on one of them, "We fear that a military observer has been killed." So I rushed down to this point, which is where the reports were coming from. It was quite clear that a mortar bomb or a rocket had landed just behind the driver's position, because there was shrapnel that had gone through the passenger door, and we know that some of that shrapnel hit Captain Mbai's head. There was blood on the seat, there was blood that had gathered in the footwell as well. And that's how he died.
It was just not right that he be killed. It was just not right. Something was not aligned that day for him. One person being unfairly destroyed like that does have a significant impact, and did have a lot of impact on the rest of us, personally.
We cried. And I don't know what to say. I think he'll always be remembered in this country.
The genocide continued for a further 4 weeks until the Tutsi rebels defeated the government forces and installed a new regime, which is still in power today.
So in the end, what does it matter that this one individual, Captain Mbai Diagne from Senegal in West Africa, saved hundreds of lives here in Rwanda? It doesn't stack up against the genocide. 800,000 people were killed back in 1994 in 3 short months there is no moral equivalence. But it has to matter that this individual, showing extraordinary bravery, tenacity and wit, managed to save these people, and it has to matter that there is some humanity in all of the horror. Here was a man who did simply what he thought was right.